leadership isn't about outsourcing care. And there's a separate discussion I want to have about, invented a new term, leadering, and I'll do some thoughts about that because we got to get away from leadership and leader or lead, because leadering is not a passive process. It's not a one and done. And somewhere along the line, leadership isn't about outsourcing care. It's actually about owning it. I was talking with a CEO not that long ago, actually fairly recently, and a comment that he made was kind of interesting. And it was, nowadays, John, you got to have an HR person on your executive team. I agree with that principle. I was surprised you don't always have that, but why? Why today? Why all of a sudden now? And his comment was, because it's all about the people. Okay, but it's always about the people. Why suddenly? Well, and it's not his words, but it was one of those things where, well, you got to have somebody to do the people stuff, the care, so that we can do the business. And I thought, wow, okay. So, I'm old enough to remember, and maybe you're not, depending on who you are, but I'm old enough to remember when people used to say, and I mean, imagine doing this today, but people used to do, well, you're a man, so therefore you should be able to do those things. Or you're a woman, so you should do those things. Like, for example, looking after a young child, a baby. Wow, that's kind of whatever, a woman's job. And I'm not getting into whether that's fact or not. My point is, people used to assign jobs based on what they thought or felt the person was going to be qualified for. And no different than you take a gifted musician and all of a sudden you put them on a roof with a hammer and saw and whatever else. It's about the gifting and the wiring. It's not actually about the package, the gifts and the wires come in, the wiring rather come in. And not only would we never say that today, but isn't that kind of what we're doing? In some ways, I think that it's like, well, HR deal with the people stuff. And I'm going to share a little bit of stats, because part of the reason that HR people are burning out is they go into their work to help people succeed, to thrive in their career. And all of a sudden now they get roped into this policy, procedures, and accountability and all those other things. Maybe you've had it in your workplace. The training, the emotional intelligence, having the difficult conversations, how to lead people, appreciation, and all the other fancy titles. But you know what this was 30 whatever years ago? People skills. I love the old Westerns. And I remember over and over, your word was your bond. And that was the theme through all of those things. I also remember in the family of origin that your word is your bond, and that handshake was as good as any legal document. Why are we doing what we know doesn't work? Assigning people roles and responsibilities without actually looking at what are they gifted at. Can be misinterpreted as, well, I'm busy doing busy things or business things or important things. I need you to look after the dishes, or I need you to look after the laundry, or I need you to look after car repair. That doesn't matter to me what it is. But why do we keep doing those kinds of things in the same way of saying that HR's job is to look after the well-being? Please understand, HR is essential. HR is vital. The policies and the procedures, some of those things are absolutely essential, especially when values are not shared in the workplace. You gotta have those policies in place. But the problem is culture, how people work together, how people play together at workplace, how people work well together at the workplace. That's not a policy. It will never be a policy. And it's about the conversations. It's about those opportunities to say, how are you? And if you will, showing up. So leadership isn't some form of outsourcing. Leadership actually sets the tone. And yes, you know what? We're all busy. We all have important things. HR, support it. And a good HR person is worth $1 bazillion. But their role is not to drive it and make it happen. Their role is to support it. And those leaders have to start with that tone, with that conversation. Because part of it is, culture isn't some poster on a wall. Or worse, something on a website that spells something out. It's what leaders do when no one is watching. And especially when things go wrong. Leadering isn't an act of outsourcing. It's that integrity, it's that courage, it's that credibility, it's those other qualities. You see, the problem is the tension, if you will, that pinch point, is hiring can be used for things like compliance. HR can be used for some of those pieces around hiring and compliance. And do it incredibly well. But HR's job is not to drive culture, not to drive engagement. In fact, I think it was, I don't remember where I read it, but the statistic was 60% of executives still see HR as administrative. That's not their job. If we delegate people to HR, we miss the whole point. People are not a department. People are actually your organization. And some stats, and I just wrote them down, but 21% of employees worldwide are engaged. That's a Gallup study. 21%. Disengagement, $8.8 trillion globally. 87%, so almost 90% of employees rate culture as good or excellent. 34% are burned out. So if leadership is not about people, what is it about? If leadership is not about people, what is it really about? That's when businesses become transactional, not relational. And we only buy once from somebody who's trying to push sell something. After that, the expression is service sells. So some action. So situation, thinking, tension, that pinch point. And what I want to do is give you some action ideas. And I want to make it really clear, simple, or whatever, but own the culture. Stop making it an outsourced role. And it doesn't matter to me what title you have on your door or your desk. You are an individual, therefore that is not outsourcing. I had this conversation today and they were talking about the culture in their workplace and we were doing some training and I said, well, you're actually mentoring the new people who are trying to become part of your culture. How you model it to them will actually change the culture tomorrow. You know what? We can focus on all the things that are wrong with the culture, but how you model it is what the culture is going to become. And especially, so number one, own it. That's not outsourcing. Number two, model it under pressure. And I call it the hot water teabag effect. But what's inside always leaks out when we're in hot water. What leaks out of us? Do you calm the tension, the stuff, or do you make it worse? And then culture is shaped in silence. It's those micro moments. It's in silence or in stress, as I just mentioned. But pay attention to what leaks out. And obviously, engage people beyond a policy. And please don't misinterpret me. If somebody doesn't want to get involved, don't push ropes. Just say you're here if you can be anything, if you want to have a conversation. But I am not going to be chasing you. But just reach out and do those check-ins. What are you hearing from people? Recognition in real time. You know the two most powerful words of recognition? Thank you. Thank you. And start asking, so what's brewing in the silence? And some of the results start, and by the way, what I'm walking through right now is I'm going to include a QR code. If you want the STAR template leadership resource, please just go to this QR code and download it. It's free for you as a resource. Situation, thinking, tension, action, result. And it's just a simple way to help process some of the things that we're working through. But when leaders own care, engagement always grows. And that is not talking about Friday night pizza and wings. We're not talking about being best buds. But that trust deepens, the culture thrives, even under pressure. Takeaways? People aren't a role. They're the reason. Culture isn't a policy, a procedure. Culture isn't a manual. Culture is what's built in those moments. Before you talk to somebody else, including HR, before you quote a policy, have you had the conversation with the person just to hear who they are? Let's you and I stop outsourcing care. Let's you and I model that kind of place where people want to work, because people are not a department's job. People are the opportunity you and I have to actually prove that we care. Be that person. Be that one that others love to see coming.